never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
In today's Lord of the Rings Online Beginner's Class Guide, we will be tackling the Minstrel. The Minstrel is classified as a healer who is the heart of the Fellowship, utilizing arcane music to damage their foes and bolster their allies' morale. I believe that the Minstrel is an amazing class for both beginners and veterans who are looking to play that more classic Dungeons & Dragons bard type character. My intention for these beginner's guides is to not only showcase a wonderful class of Lotro, but to help anyone who may be struggling to get their hero off the ground. So let's jump in. But before we can begin our musical adventure, we need a hero. And everybody can be the Minstrel. So your flavor of Minstrel is up to you, I guess. Now I'm sure there's some best in slot videos out there, but I recommend you play what's fun. Personally, I say f*** the meta.
Rude.
Now that you have your race, let's talk about what you receive at first level. The Minstrel begins play with 3 stances. Each stance alters the Minstrel's abilities, creating a strong versatility to the class. The stances are Dissonance. This stance has a 1-second casting time and alters the Minstrel's healing abilities to self only and adds plus 25% to the damage of all ballads. Resonance, a healing stance that alters Major Ballad into a healing skill and offers plus 10% outgoing healing. And Melody, a neutral stance that offers both outgoing healing and ballad damage, but at lower rates than Dissonance and the Resonance stance. Think of your stances as a fighting form. Dissonance for damage output, Resonance as a healer, and Melody is somewhere in between. All stances have a 1-second induction or casting time and offer variety to tackling different combat situations. Also at first level you begin with a strike skill. This skill changes based on which stance you have active. Dissonant Strike requires that you have the Dissonant stance active. This skill is a melee attack on a 5-second cooldown that deals good damage and adds 10% to your incoming healing modifier for 30 seconds and removes 1 corruption from the target. Hero Strike requires the Melody stance. This is also a melee attack skill, deals moderate damage, increases your incoming healing by 10% for 30 seconds, removes 1 corruption from your target, and heals you for a small amount of morale, and rests on a 5-second cooldown. And finally, Healer Strike. This melee attack skill requires the Resonance stance to perform and deals light damage to your target, removes 1 corruption from the target, and adds 10% incoming healing to yourself and your fellowship within 20 meters, and also heals a small amount of morale. All 3 of these skills are good attack skills if your enemy gets too close. If you're forced into melee range, be sure to have your strike skill within easy reach. Also at first level, the Minstrel begins with a coda skill that alters depending on your current stance. To perform a coda, you must first apply 3 ballads to a target. The codas are Coda of Fury. This finisher deals solid light damage to a single target and removes all ballads from the Minstrel and requires that you have the Dissonant stance active. Coda of Melody. This finisher deals area of effect light damage to a maximum of 6 targets within a 12-meter radius and heals allies also within that radius, and also applies a bonus to your fellowship's block, parry, and evade chance for 30 seconds and requires the Melody stance to perform. And Coda of Resonance. This is a healing finisher that heals for a solid amount of morale and increases incoming healing by 5% for 30 seconds and requires the Resonance stance to perform. The Minstrel also begins play with the Major Ballad skill. That skill comes in 2 forms based on your current stance. For the Dissonance and Melody stance, Major Ballad boosts healing capability while also dealing damage to a single target and adds 1 to your ballad count, but does expire quickly while out of combat. While in Resonance stance, Major Ballad becomes a heal for both the Minstrel and nearby targets. And finally, the Minstrel begins play with 2 normal skills. These skills do not alter based on your current stance. Minor Ballad boosts tactical damage and harms a single target, dealing light damage and adds 1 to your total ballad count. And finally, Raise the Spirit is an induction skill with a 1.4 casting time and heals morale for a moderate amount. Armed with a good variety of heals and damage skills, the starting Minstrel is a force to be reckoned with. Now the Minstrel does wear light armor and is very squishy right out the gate, but most of your best damage skills are instant cast spells, allowing you to fight while on the move and kite tougher enemies. But utilizing the ballad system to quickly obtain 3 ballads and then drop a heavy damaging coda upon your foes is a surefire way to succeed in the early levels and beyond. So let's talk about combat at first level. Usually there isn't a perfect setup at level 1, but the Minstrel does have a good variety when it comes to how you want to tackle combat. For me, I set up my hotbar to have easy access to both minor and major ballad, following with a coda or a quick swipe from my strike skill to finish off tougher enemies. I found the early levels of the Minstrel to be pretty easy. The class has strong heals and decent DPS right off the bangle, so gaining a foothold with the Minstrel is a pretty easy task. Let's move on to what you gain as you level and how this adds to the already strong versatility of the Minstrel. At level 4, you gain your first Cry ability. Now, the name of the cry changes based on your stance, but I didn't notice a vast difference to the ability until I was able to spend class traits to enhance the quality of my cry skill. So for simplicity's sake, Piercing Cry, regardless of your stance, is a shout that deals solid damage to a single target and can interrupt inductions. That's an enemy casting time if you're unfamiliar, and removes 1 corruption from the target. At 6th level, you gain access to another normal skill. Perfect Ballad deals light damage and reduces the power cost of all non-anthem skills by 3%. Also at 6th level, you gain access to your class specialization. Now I know that some changes are coming to the Minstrel class in the future, and these changes are covered very well by a fellow Lotro content creator, Louis7, who in my opinion is the guru of Lotro content creation. I'll leave a link to his video in the description. Be sure to check him out if you haven't already, and be sure to subscribe to keep Mordor at bay. Okay, back to specializations. Now, I decided to follow the red line Minstrel due to the damage potential the line offers, and the blue line if you are planning to be a healer for a fellowship or constantly play in a group. For the red line, you gain the following initial skills. Anthem of the Third Age requires 3 ballads, the same as a coda finisher, and buffs your call damage by 10% for 1 minute, and refreshes the use of Call of the Second Age, which is a skill that you won't have access to until level 34. And Call to Fate, which is a call skill, so it is affected by your Anthem of the Third Age buff, and deals solid damage to a single target with a good crit chance on a 10-second cooldown. At 7th level, you gain access to your first class trait, and I recommend Concussive Shout, which alters your Piercing Cry skill, offering a plus 30% critical chance to the skill and a 5-second stun upon scoring a critical hit. This skill is great for stopping enemies in their tracks or killing them outright due to the skill's solid damage. Now for group content, as you level and unlock instances, I recommend the blue line as your secondary specialization, and although I play primarily solo, it's always a good idea to have a group build in mind. Soothing Voice offers an increased bonus to your outgoing healing to a maximum of plus 10%, and following that with Pause for Breath, which has a chance to refund your mana or power upon casting a healing skill. This is a no-brainer. More mana means more heals, which means no party wipes, easy peasy. At this point in your musical adventure, I suggest pursuing Slayer deeds to snag your first virtue, and I recommend the Wisdom virtue. It's starting to become a trend. As a spellcaster, this virtue offers bonuses to your will stat, tactical mastery, and finesse rating, as well as a small bonus to both physical and tactical mastery. In my opinion, it's the best spellcaster virtue and worth grabbing early on. At 8th level, you gain access to the Theme of Battle skill, which alters based on your current stance. As a redline minstrel, the skill is Timeless Echoes of Battle. This tactical skill deals damage over time to a single target and is a toggle skill that must be cast on a foe and costs 20 power to cast, and drains 1 power or mana per second. This is a fantastic opener skill and should always be used during any fight. While in Melody stance, the skill results in a lesser version, but is still solid damage over time. And finally, while in the Resonance stance, becomes the Melody of Battle skill, which reflects damage back on your foe and increases your parry rating by a moderate amount. At this point, you have all you need for a full rotation. Fighting as a minstrel can be close combat, auto-attacking alongside your strike skill while tossing up heals as needed, or you can kite your foes with an assortment of ballads and coda instant casts, relying only on your strike skill as needed. As I leveled, I quickly discovered that regardless of which stance I was in, the minstrel was able to solo with ease. I was either able to overheal my enemy's damage while in resonance stance, or simply kill them before they could do substantial damage while in dissonance stance, and somewhere in between while using melody. I believe that there really isn't a wrong way to tackle content as a minstrel. You have such a solid variety of both heals and damage potential. Leveling was more of a what do I want to do to my enemy rather than a static one-size-fits-all build. But let's move on to what you get as you gain levels. At 12th level, you gain Invocation of Elbereth, which is an instant cast fear spell that lasts for 15 seconds and breaks upon dealing damage to your foe. This skill is for managing pulls or scaring off a tougher foe to cast a heal. At 14th level, you gain Enlivening Grace. This 7-second casting time spell revives a fallen ally at 50% morale and 0 power or mana, and places a debuff on them restricting any further revives for 30 seconds and costs 50 power to cast. Bolster Courage is a 16th level normal skill that heals a large amount of morale or hit points to yourself or an ally and sits on a 3-second cooldown. Also at 16th level, you gain Story of Courage, which buffs your target against fear within 15 meters and removes up to 1 disease, wound, fear, or poison with a maximum strength of your level plus 5, within 45 meters of the minstrel and sits on a 10-second cooldown. For the Redline Minstrel at 17th level, you gain access to the Call of Arome. This is a tactical skill that deals area of effect damage in a 5-meter radius with a maximum of 3 targets, and reduces their light mitigation for 10 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. This is a fantastic skill for when you are dealing with a cluster of enemies. At level 20, you gain Inspire Fellows, which is a 20-meter radius heal with a 2.5 casting time and reduces incoming ranged, tactical, and melee damage on a 6-second cooldown. It is worth mentioning that this skill cannot be used while in the dissonance stance. And finally, Spirit of Freedom, which removes dazes, stuns, and fellowship maneuver stuns, recovers from being knocked prone, but not dread or full immobilization. Although Lotro boasts a great variety of damage-dealing classes, I believe that the Minstrel holds a place among their ranks, and as far as I can tell is the king of healing. This class comes equipped with amazing versatility for both solo and group play. If you enjoy bard classes or playing healers with damage potential, I would recommend giving the Minstrel a shot. Thank you guys so much for your time today. I hope that this video helps someone on their quest for song and battle. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like to serenade the algorithm and consider subscribing to bolster my courage. And have a great day. Goodbye.
Guys, your harmonies were a little pitchy. Gordon, you're amazing. Talent recognizes talent. Let's go again. 3, 4.